tames the Queen of Sheba. He is at the pinnacle, the very top of his career, both spiritually and government and economics, everything. He is at the very top of his life.
Sama sa kahimtang ni King Solomon nga sa diyang naana siya sa pinakataas nga posisyon sa elevasyon sa iyang kinabuhi isip po sa kahari kasi sila pinakasikat sa tanan diri pa mura siya presidente mura siya si Trump.
He's the richest man in the world. He's the most famous man in the world. And in one chapter, watch what happens. And King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh. And what? Look in verse 4. For it came to pass when Solomon was old that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. Now that right there, those 4 verses are the story, the true story of how you can go from a close relationship with the Lord to a very damnable idolater in a very short time.
Uni hulagway nga diin dako ang kamaturan nga sa dihang sa panahon nga suod ka sa Ginoo, duol ka sa Ginoo, dali ra diay kayo ka mapalayo kaniya. Ug mas grabe pag gani hinuon ang imong pagkahigugma sa idolatry kung imo ning sun-on ning mga sistemahan.
And God didn't want Joshua to experience that. He didn't want the people going into the promised land to be tempted by that, because idolatry gets so wicked that you will end up sacrificing your own children to satisfy false gods.
Dili gyud gusto o buot sa Ginoo nga ikaw Joshua mailad ug malimbungan anang mga idolatry kay gumikan sa kangiladan na imo pang mahimo nga himong isakripisyo maskin imong kaugalingong anak, imong ipapatay, imong ihalad sa mga Diyos-Diyos.
So God said in Deuteronomy 7:1, this is the second time he mentions this, when the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and hast cast out many nations before thee. And he lists them, verse 2. And when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them, utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Now that sounds very harsh, and it sounds like it's out of character for the Lord.
Di mo nang basahon, mangilingigan kas ginawa ni. Kay murag grabe ka, murag dautan ni mo paminahon, di ba? Ayaw pagkig! Ayaw! Kaya dili! Grabe ang saksyon di Ginoo. Kung imong tanawon murag, inani ba gud ang Ginoo? Pag dili siya mayo, tanawon ni mo ani.
You tend to say, well, that's not the God I serve. The God I serve is the God of love. He died on the cross and all of this. What are you saying, God? That they are not going to dwell in the land. Have no mercy on them. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Keep reading. And when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them, utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Watch it. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. Pretty severe. But God had a method of accomplishing this goal, and he wanted them to do it his way.
Naman ko'y pamaagi ang Ginoo nga disud na to sabton. Ya, kanimo gud yang mga pamaagi mao gininta iyang gusto nga tumanon ilang Joshua o kanato. Problema na to ron kay mas bright pa tas Ginoo sahay. Mubot-buot man ta.
Deuteronomy 20 and verse 10. When thou comest nigh unto a city to fight against it. This is them going into the promised land. When thou comest nigh unto a city to fight against it, then proclaim peace unto it. So just like they shouted at the walls of Jericho, they come to another city. This is the way they're supposed to do it. They say, do you want peace? Will you make peace with us? And if the people inside will agree to serve Israel and to accept the rulership of Israel over them, then it shall be, if it make the answer of peace and open unto thee, then it shall be that all the people that is found therein shall be tributaries unto thee, and they shall serve thee. Do you agree? And if they say yes, they make peace and they keep their own city, but they're under the domination of Israel.
So, mora na instruction to Ginoo. Singgiti lang na sila, musugot sila. Okay na. Ug dili apat ya. Anara ka simple.
Now, that's not as old as you may think it is. You've got a situation in Israel today, an area called Gaza, which is ruled by and occupied by the nation of Israel, but it's filled with Muslim people, Arab people, and they are bucking against the rulership of Israel, and they're causing all kinds of trouble and problems, and they're left over people that are described here in Deuteronomy.
So, mo na kahimtang karon sa karong panahon na diin buhi pata karon sa Israel, doon na lugar dito nga gitawag og Gaza. Hari-hari dito parehagalan di sa ubos. Maura na silang mga tawhana nga atong gi-describe aning mga Midianites. Maura na sila mga Muslim, mga muklo, sa pagtawag nila, mga gahi, mga rebelde, kay under man na sila sa ngalan sa Israel. Kaya Israel man tayo gadumala, anak. Para diri ba sa tuwa, tayo gadumala, kung nagigrebilde, mo na diya na sa ubos, mo na pareha ng ngalan, ang mga tao na sa Gaza.
Verse 12, and if it will make no peace with thee, but will make war against thee, then thou shalt besiege it. You have to know what the word besiege means.
Kalibutan.
Besiege is to surround the city, and however long it takes, nobody goes in, nobody comes out, no provisions can be brought in, no farmers markets, no trucks, no nothing. It's besieged, and the people slowly begin to do without. So that's what the way that you're supposed to conquer the city that will not make peace with you.
So ang sistema gisugo sa Ginoo sa mga nasod nga gahig mga ulo nga dili mo pagsinggitan, tungo dili, pasakop dili, i-besiege, palibutan. Kanang buot pagpalibutan, walay makagawas, may kasulod, di pas mo kadito gini kahurot sa inyong supply. O mo nang mga lungkoy, mga niwang, manggawas, ay pa mo surrender. Besiege, palibutan.
That's exactly the condition that Gaza is in today. Gaza refuses to recognize Israel as a legitimate government. The Arab nations, when they print maps, like in a bookstore, national bookstore, when the Arab nations print maps, they call that land of Israel Palestine, but they will not recognize it as the nation of Israel. You buy a map, that section's called Palestine on a Muslim map.
Ang mga Palestinyo, kanang mga tao na sa Gaza, mga Palestinyo man na, di good na, wag na nila giila ang Israel nga nasod. Munang di gyud sila magpaubos maskin under sila. Naghimo na sila mapa, ang ilang mapa diha sa Saudi, diha sa Kanandia, di ka kitag Israel. Wala na nila gapinaan ang porma pero ang ngalan dili Israel, Palestine. Nakakuha na.
Now Gaza is completely surrounded by Israel and the Mediterranean Sea. And Israel by war has won that land. They own that land. Israel can do what they want with it, but they tolerate the Muslims in Gaza to stay there. Even though they cause all kinds of trouble, it's the mercy of the nation of Israel that Gaza even is allowed to exist.
Mao ni Israel kagabot-buot man. Ingnan nga dili na sila ilang gipasagdan ang Gaza, ilang gialaw nga naarang gyapon diha, gipasagdan nila, gitolerate nila nga unay bisag daghimo og daghang klase nga mga problema kay mga rebelde di pato. Di sige lag bombahan karon, di mao pud nay resulta nga no laging di muntos Ginoo.
So this is the method that God chose for them to come into the promised land and begin to occupy it, which God gave to the seed of Abraham. Everything is set up so that God will fight their wars for them. He even told them that if they allow it, if Israel will allow God to do it, God will send in hornets that'll drive the inhabitants out of the land. You don't even have to fight. Now, if you have to fight, fight. But if they would allow God, He would send in hornets.
Hingan sa Ginoo, kamo mga Israelita, magpatulang mo na ako, tanan nga ihatag ko ninyo taa. Kung dunay mo sukol, tabangan ta mo. Kung makig-away mo, pwede. Pero kung dili mo makig-away, pwede gihapon. Kaya ako na ng padala ang putyukan. Managan man na. Putyukan na padala. Hornet. Kau pagukod kay putyukan, di ba? Di mo ito magsambay ka sa balay ba? Di mo puyan. Padagan juga ba?
Now, God said, if you have to fight, fight. Look in Deuteronomy 20:15. Thus shalt thou do unto all the cities which are very far off from thee, which are not of the cities of these nations. And if it will make no peace with thee, but will make war against thee, then thou shalt besiege it. And then he says, if you have to make war, you kill everybody. Now you can marry the women if you want, but you kill everybody else. Now, that's what he plainly had it 3 times. God said, this is what you do. You make no covenant with them, period.
Katulog na giingnan sila sa Ginoo nga inigsulod ninyo diri sa promised land, daghan man mga gapuyo diha, pamatya gyud na, ayaw gyud pakigsabot ana, ayaw gyud pakig peace anang mga tawana. Pamatya na tanan, tapos pwede mahurot ng mga laki, pwede ninyo pangasawon mga babae. Pero ayaw gyud pakig amigo.
Now, you've heard me say once or 1,000 times, sin always complicates life. What Joshua did was he disobeyed the clear command of God. And it complicated a lot of people's lives for a long time in the future. Now, you don't usually think about that. You think about, how is what I'm about to do going to affect me now? What if I don't get caught? I don't even get the consequences of sin. What about the next generation? What about your grandkids? What about the judgment seat of Christ? You don't think about that. But Joshua caused complications of sin for many generations in the future because he simply would not obey the commands of God.
Wala gani si Joshua, managpatuos Ginoo. Di sige na kong ingon nga ang sala makakomplikar gyud sa kinabuhi. Mao ni hinungdan nga si Joshua ang iyang sala nga nahimo, wa gyud patuos sa Ginoo. Mao to hinungdan nga hangtod karon kuan api problema ang Israel. So parehara na sa imo haba nga maghuna-una ka nga binimog manalitan big himo na kun di ko masakpan. Imong feeling nga di ko masakpan, di walay consequence. Kundi nimo mahibaw dili ka masakpan ug uroy palitag nangabit ka. Wala ka nasakpan. Inanganak na. Di imsao na lang na imong children ko uroy magbahinay na sa imong isa ka taro nga yuta, imo claim na di nag-away na. Mo na dia. Mo nang sin complicates life. So, ayaw na lang lagi.
So, it didn't take long for the complications to begin. And it came to pass at the end of 3 days, after they had made a league with them, that they heard that they were their neighbors and that they dwelt among them. The children of Israel journeyed and came unto their cities, the cities of the Gibeonites, on the 3rd day. Now their cities were Gibeon and Chephirah, and Beeroth, and Kirjath-jearim. Now look, and the children of Israel smote them not, because the princes of the congregation had sworn unto them by the Lord God of Israel, and all the congregation murmured against the princes. Hey, you guys, you rule over us. Why did you do that stupid thing? Why did you make a league with the Gibeonites, and now we've got to do things different than what God told us to do?
Bagulbol na mga tao, gumikan lagi sa nag-ulo-ulo, nga di magpatuo sa Ginoo. Mao na hinungdan, di giingnan nga, nyo mananggimo, naunsa na noon ta ni ron. Muritsing na noon itong kinabuhi.
So things began to get complicated. 3 days later, they come upon the city of Gibeon. And they discovered that the guys that lied to them and came on Halloween in costumes, that they actually lived right here. And the people that Joshua was ruling over were not happy. Now that's the first trouble. All of the battles in chapter 10 and all of the troubles that are because of Joshua's disobedience. Then, how many years? Let's see. Several hundred years later, how many generations? Quite a few. Several generations later, David is king on the throne. And there was a famine, verse 1. Then there was a famine in the days of David 3 years, year after year. Now, a famine is when there's not much food or no food. So all these people are suffering. Why? Because Joshua made a league with the Gibeonites when God told him not to.
Ang tanang tao nag-antos sa hulaw, tanang kagutom, famine. Ang famine kani na gamay rin pagkaon or wala yung pagkaon. Tabo na gumikan sa kang Joshua nga gahig ulo, wala nagpatuo sa Ginoo.
So David is suffering also. He's the king. Not a famine for 1 year, not a famine for 2 years, a famine for 3 years. And David, he said, what can we do about this? All these people are hungry or starving to death. So he goes to the Lord, verse 1. Then there was a famine in the days of David 3 years, year after year, and David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord answered, it is for Saul and for his bloody house. Watch it. Because he slew the Gibeonites. And David has to go back in his history books, I'm being a little funny now, in order to find out what did Saul do? When was he unmerciful to the Gibeonites?
Tong dunay kagutom, hulaw sa panahon ni David kay Lukatuig, gano'n manilod. Tana siya kay mag-istorya panahon sa Ginoo sa una. Hingnan sa Ginoo nga sala ni Saul kay gano'n iyang gipamatay ang mga Gibeonites. De nag-review si David sa iyang history unsa man din mga Gibeonites.
Now I'm going to tell you this story because it would involve reading an awful lot of scripture. David and Saul were having their own personal problems, and Saul tried to kill David several times. David would come and play the harp, and the evil spirit would go out of Saul, and then it would come back, and Saul would try to kill David because he just hated him for no reason. Eventually, Saul is chasing David all over the place, and David is running and trying to save his life. You want to say that much? We'll go on.
So, si David ug si Saul kay nagkontra man, nag-away man, gumikan sa kasilusan ni Saul kang David, kasi gudgokod kang David kay ang patyon.
And so David is running for his life, and he comes to the tabernacle, and he talks to the priest Abiathar, and Abiathar says, hey, what are you doing here? He says, I'm on business for the king, and I haven't taken any food. It's so important for the king. Can you give me and my men some bread from the tabernacle? And do you have a sword here that I can have? Now, David was well known. He was not the king, Saul was the king. But you remember, David was the one that killed Goliath. And David, everybody knew David was going to be the next king, even though he's not directly related to Saul.
Okay, si David sa diyang ning layas siya kang Saul mo to nga naabot siya sa templo. Ang pare dito si Abiathar. So yang ging nga layas man to siya. Yang ging nan si kuan si Abiathar nga naba kay makaon dia sa imong kuan og naba kay espada. Nga si David baya kay nailhan baya sa tibuok Israelita kasi siya nakapatay kang Goliath. So sikat kay siya.
Now, David asked Abiathar, if you got a sword, if you got some bread. And Abiathar, believe it or not, he took the hot bread from the holy place, the second compartment of the tabernacle, and gave it to David and his men. You ain't supposed to do that. But he made a decision that these men really need it, and they're good men and they're not defiled. So the priest was supposed to eat the bread, but Abiathar gave it to David and his men. And the priest said, we've only got one sword here. It's the sword of Goliath, which actually belongs to David.
Nagihatag ni Abiathar ang katong mga pagkaon, bread na sa ikaduha. Sa holy place, itong holy place lang. Dapat para ito sa mga pare. So, gihatag niya kang David yung tao o gihapag yung gingnan nga naay isa ra ka espada dire. Ang espada ni Goliath, katong napatay ni David.
Word gets back to Saul that while David was on the run, he went to the tabernacle and Abiathar did this and did that. Doeg, that's a good name for your child. Doeg was one of Saul's good men, bad man, but one of Saul's good men. I mean, he was bad to the bone. And Doeg was the one that told Saul, and he told Saul that Abiathar had given him a sword and had fed the people of David. Saul goes into a rage, he gets filled with the devil, and he goes chasing David with so many thousand men. Go ahead.
Si Doeg, ipangalan daw na sa inyong mga anak, ang ganahan mo, grabe ka ba dungon nga tao, mo'y misumbong kang Saul. Naging na niya, Saul. Si Abiathar bitaw, Saul, yung gipakaon. Ya, si Abiathar pare baya, yung gipakaon dito pagkaon sa kuwan, gihatag pa yung espada ni Goliath. Di, suko kay si Saul baya, atong panahon na patyon biya niya si David. Di siyang kasuko, nasaniba na sa siya, iya na pong gipadalaan ni pagukod o pila kalibo nga sundalo aron mapatay si David.
So to make a long story short, Saul goes to the tabernacle, gets the priests that are operating the tabernacle and their families, and kills them all. Because in Saul's mind, these people helped his enemy and they're vile. We'll learn that lesson a little bit later. But he kills all of them, then he's still not satisfied, and he goes to the city where the priests live, the city of Nob, and he kills everybody in the city. And there were a lot of priests that lived in that city. But it probably also had some Gibeonites. Remember them? Aha. Saul killed them all. Go ahead.
Sa kasuko niya kang Abiathar, si Abiathar usa ka pare, iyang gipatay at iyang pamilya. Unya kay siya, bayatar kay taga-Nob man di ay, ang katong mga tao sa Nob, iyang gipamatay, kay daghan man pari dito, iyang gipamatay. Daw bi kay sa Nob, daghan man ang Gibeonites dito. Gi-apil man yata nagpatay as tang Gibeonite. Hanumdum mo Gibeonites, katong mga mangingilad, katong naning kamot o pamutbot o gabot-buot.
The news that Saul had killed everybody in Nob, which was a city of the priests, the news got out and it was so stunning to the people, nobody paid any attention that there were some Gibeonites there too. In fact, in 1 Samuel chapter 22 is the story of Saul killing all the people in the city of Nob, and it's not even mentioned in there about the Gibeonites. But all that I've read seems to show that that's when Saul killed these Gibeonites, and God does not forget. So here, several hundred years later, after Joshua made a covenant against God's will, against his commands, made a covenant with the Gibeonites, and you just kind of take it for granted. Time passes, people forget. A couple of hundred years later, David and his people are suffering from famine, and God says it's because of what Saul, a couple hundred years before, did when he made the covenant, and Saul, did I say that wrong? When Joshua made the covenant and Saul broke it. That's why this famine. All of the people that are affected by it, sin always complicates life.
Mo na giingon daging ang sala nakakomplikar gayud. Ang problema kay pila na tukatuig ang milabay sa kag ang nakasala si Joshua. Si Joshua nakasala, iyang nakigsabot sa mga Gibeonites. Dabi karon ang Gibeonites nagpuyo na ditong malinawon, gipatay ni Saul. Pagpatay ni Saul, si David karon mo ay naganto sa famine. Kay nahinumdum ang Ginoo. So mo nang di giday ta kalingkawas aning sala.
Okay. Go to chapter 10. Joshua chapter 10. Probably the most debated, disagreeable portion of Scripture. Now, because of the covenant that Joshua made, Joshua has to fight battles that he would not have had to fight if Joshua had done it God's way. Go ahead.
Joshua, kung wala pa na lagi nagbuot-buot, dili lang unta ni magka-komplikar lagi. Gini.
God made a covenant with Abraham, and he keeps that covenant, and he was going to give the promised land to the seed of Abraham. It's happening now. Joshua is in charge. They're taking occupation of the land of Palestine, and Joshua has complications because of his disobedience.
Gisaad man lagi sa Ginoo sa mga kaanakan ni Abraham, ang problema kay si Joshua wala motuman sa gisulti sa Ginoo gisugo sa iya. Mo nang nakomplikar na karon ang kinabuhi ng Israelita.
Now look in verse 5. Because Joshua was successful thus far. Kings began to get together, put their armies together, because they see the handwriting on the wall. They see where Joshua, if he's allowed to continue, is going to take them all out. And of course, that's the plan. So these kings get together to go against Joshua. And Joshua, he said, appreciate you guys coming, therefore I don't have to go chase you down. They all got together. Look in verse 5, chapter 10, verse 5. Therefore the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, king of Lachish, king of Eglon, gathered themselves together and went up, they and all their host, and encamped before Gibeon and made war against it. Now, you have something to say so far? Because Joshua made a league with the Gibeonites, that means he has to protect what they have. So he made the league, and then 3 days later, sin always complicates life, he figures out that they're neighbors, but he already made the promise. So he has to protect the people, the armies that come against Gibeah, which are all of these people mentioned in verse 5. So now sin always complicates life. Joshua has to fight all these people to protect Gibeah because of his league.
Di napugos si Joshua og laban aning mga Gibeonites kay Gilgal din, no? Sa Gilgal kay sulungon na mas makontra kay naidad digi siya nakigsabot mo nga agi amigo sige alay ta kauban ta. Di mao toy hinungdan nga napugos siya og laban aning Gilgal kay nakigsabot mo sa Gibeonites.
Now Joshua never lost a battle. So look in verse 10. All of these armies, 5 kings' armies together. Look in verse 10. And the Lord discomfited them before Israel and slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them along the way that goeth up to Bethhoron, and smote them to Azekah and unto Makkedah. Keep watching. And it came to pass as they fled from before Israel and were in the going down of Bethhoron, that the Lord cast down great stones from the heaven. Maybe hailstones, maybe rocks, probably hailstones, upon them unto Azekah, and they died. They were more which died from hailstones than they which whom the children of Israel slew with the sword. So Joshua has a great victory, but it's God that's helping him out, even though he made the covenant.
Si Joshua sedang away sa ilang mga kunta, gitabangan gihapon siya sa Ginoo.
Now, what's in verse 12 is probably the greatest physical miracle in the Bible. Joshua is running out of daylight. He wants to finish the job. It's a huge job. It's really going to take another day. But if he quits now, his enemy will be able to regroup, rearm, or escape. And David wants to finish the job. Joshua. Okay. You want to tell him that?
Hinotoy naman. Halagi na hinungdan nga si Joshua away na sa iyang mga kunta, na bisan lagi kay nakigsabot naman siya dito sa mga Gibeonites, na mapugos yun siya og laban sa ilaha. Kay valid man gud ang ilang pakigsabot niya, apil man lang Ginoo, mura bitaw mo nagkabinant man gud.
Now, verse 12 is as far as we're going to go tonight, but read every word carefully. Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel, and he said in the sight of Israel, do you remember when Moses said in the sight of all Israel, he held up his rod, and the sea, the Red Sea, parted? Here's the equal with Joshua. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed. Okay, we'll not go any further. Here's what I want you to do. As an assignment, I want you to read this over and over again, maybe 10 times. Just read that verse and the next verse. And I want you to tell me, first of all, if you really believe it. Secondly, what would happen? What are the things that might happen in your mind? I'm just trying to get you to think. What would be the things that might happen if this actually happened the way that it says it happened? What would happen if the sun stood still? Because all of you have been taught that the sun is the center of the universe. All the planets revolve around it, orbit. This says the sun stood still, not the earth. It doesn't say that it appeared that the sun stood still. It said the sun stood still. What would happen to the earth, to the sun, to the planets? And there's no wrong answer. It's your opinion. I want you to write it down. Have it ready next Friday.
Assignment. Kaning the sun stood still. Unsa daw inyong hunahuna ani? Una, to ba mo ani? Ikaduha, sakay may tabo. Nga atong nahibawan, ang kalibutan man nato, ang mga planeta may gatuyok-tuyok. Nga ano man nga ang sun naman ho ipapuyok. Kinsa man day gatuyok. Mao na